Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Sarah Fisher from Connective Family, and I wanted to talk about consequences today. Consequences is a topic that comes up all of the time. We are asked about it constantly. How do I help my child to change? They've got to have a consequence. They've got to learn from their actions. They've got to stop doing what they're doing. Or what's the natural consequence for whatever behavior it is? Or what consequence can I put into place for this? It's just not good enough. They've just got to change. Or they've just got to go to school, or whatever it is. It's a topic that comes up so much. And it's also a topic that creates a lot of discussion. There are lots of different viewpoints on it, lots of different thoughts on it. Children with different needs learn differently. Our own perspective as an adult can be hugely impactful when we're thinking about consequences. You know, how were we parented? What are our thoughts on the world? How do our children learn? What worked for us? All of those things are really big questions when we're thinking about consequences. And as I said, we are asked about it, and I'm asked about it loads when we are working with families one-to-one, myself and the team, when we're running training courses for parents and carers, but also when we're working with professionals, when we're teaching them the connective parenting approach. Consequences often creates quite a bit of debate around what we should be doing. I wanted to share a different take on it, I suppose, and one that has kind of been mulling in my mind for quite a while now, and I've started to think about with parents and with professionals. And I think it's helping to change or to view it differently, should I say, not necessarily change our mindset, but to view it differently. So often when we talk about consequences, there is understandably a punitive feeling to it. Our child in this situation has done something wrong, therefore they need a consequence. They need something negative to happen to help them understand their behavior and to learn from it, because if we give them a consequence, they'll learn from it. Now, I know as well as you do that I can sometimes have a consequence for something. It doesn't stop me doing it because I haven't learned how to do it differently. So to take a simple example, I know if I eat too many chocolate biscuits, and I do like a chocolate biscuit, I will put on weight if I eat too much food overall. Now, I know that, but it doesn't stop me from eating too many chocolate biscuits. And I might end up feeling sick because I've eaten too many chocolate biscuits. The consequence isn't enough to necessarily stop me because the internal drive or the ability to do something else to express that emotion if I'm eating from boredom isn't there all the time. And it's those consequences we need to think about. If you have a child who is, maybe they're hitting, and that's the way when they're angry, when they're frustrated, when they're stressed, when they're tired, they hit out. Maybe you're putting a consequence in. Maybe you are stopping them from going to football on Saturday, which they love and is great because it's physical, they're with their friends. But nope, you've hit your brother, you can't go to football on Saturday. Is that changing behaviour? Now, so many parents I talk to will say, no, but I can't let them go and do something they like when they've been hitting during the week. And I understand that. 100% I understand that. The thing is, if it's not helping them change their behaviour, all you're doing is actually creating more negative emotions for that child. You're impacting your relationship with them. You're also, the reality is, if they're going to football for a few hours on Saturday mornings, you're not getting that break. They're not getting the physical exercise and you're not getting that break, and the behaviour is not changing. So if you're not getting the results from putting in those kind of consequences, I want to suggest something different. Instead of thinking about what consequence does my child need in this scenario, can we think about what outcome do I want from this scenario? So if we go back to the person hitting, the child hitting, the outcome that person wants, the parent wants the child to stop hitting. And actually, I believe the child wants to stop hitting as well. I don't believe the child is wanting to hit. They don't know how else to express their emotions. So if the outcome that we want is that they stop hitting, how do we achieve that outcome? Now, if we're saying or thinking that Punitive consequences don't work, i.e. stopping them going to football, hasn't worked, it hasn't changed behaviour. What do we need to do? If we reframe it and think in that moment when they're lashing out, they are dysregulated. They are having a very automatic response to that scenario. Link that to when I'm stressed, I eat chocolate. I have to retrain my brain not to eat chocolate when I'm stressed. And if I don't retrain my brain, I'm still going to go and eat chocolate every time I'm stressed. And I'm sure that's something that lots of you will kind of relate to, that when we're stressed, we have certain things we do. Eating is mine. And it's the same for our children. When they're really stressed, they're dysregulated, their go-to is hitting. And that's not because you've not parented them well enough or anything like that. It's just their brain hasn't learned what else to do. So if our outcome is stopping the hitting, how do we help them get there? How do we change that automatic habit? So think about what you might do for you. So for me, I might not have biscuits in the house. I might put them away from where they normally are so that when I'm getting a drink, the biscuits aren't right there. There's all those little things that you might do to change the habit or to replace the habit. So what we want to do with our child, if your outcome is to stop hitting, how do you change that automatic process? I'm going to suggest a few ways. Firstly, when they're dysregulated, you need to co-regulate with them. So that means keeping yourself calm and regulated and doing regulating activities with them. So that could be anything from deep breathing to jumping up and down on the spot, to having a drink through a straw. Lots of different things, and depending on your child's needs, what works will be different for every single child. So you co-regulate with them in the moment to help them calm down, to help them release that emotion in healthier ways. That's starting to get their brain used to regulating in a calm way, which is really powerful. In the moment, you're just focused on the regulation. You're not trying to tell them off or issue a consequence or any of those things. We're not doing any of that. It's just focused on regulation so that hopefully they don't hit. But it's not going to happen necessarily the first time, but you're focused on co-regulation. Then afterwards, we have the conversation. We talk to them. I could see you were really angry earlier on. Are you okay? And that conversation comes from a place of connecting with their feelings and is empathetic. That's not a telling off conversation. So we're not having that conversation instead of a consequence. So the conversation isn't, you're not good enough, you need to stop, you shouldn't have done that. It's not a lecture, it's not a telling off. It's very much, how are you feeling? What was going on? What happened beforehand that meant you wanted to lash out at your brother? And from that, we can help them then to think about, do you know, when I'm really angry, I go for a walk, I have a drink, I jump up and down on the spot, I put my favourite music on and dance to it. And we help them to understand what will work for them. Now, those of you thinking, that doesn't sound like it's going to work. It's going to take some time and it's going to take some effort. But as a parent, I can tell you it does. As a professional who's worked with hundreds of families, I can tell you it does. I can tell you it does. And it's one of the hardest things to do, though, because it's not what traditionally we might have done and what society might be telling you you need to do. And because you don't see an instant, an instant change, it can feel like it's not working. But if you are willing to put the effort in, if you are willing to go, okay, consequences aren't working, I need to change things. How can I do it? Just start thinking about outcome rather than consequence. That in itself will change your mindset from that understandably punitive side that we have with consequence to how can we move forward and change this positively. And yes, you're going to have to co-regulate a number of times. Yes, you're going to have the conversation a number of times. And it will be slightly different every time. And yes, you're going to have to show them in your everyday life how you manage emotions. If you are shouting all the time every time you're angry, don't be surprised when your child is shouting every time they're angry. because they do copy. They learn from us. So that's my thought today. I wanted to just think, if you're struggling with consequences, if you don't feel you're doing enough to help them, if you're worried about leaving it to natural consequences because your child's not learning, they might not be able to learn from a natural consequence or a logical consequence, and most won't learn from an illogical consequence, then think about outcomes. If you an illogical consequence is you hit your brother, you can't go to football. It's not going to work. So let's step away from consequences and move to outcomes. What outcome do we want for our child for this? Once we know what outcome we want, then we can think about what steps do we need to put in place to work with them to achieve that outcome. And when we work with them, when we work with their emotional development, then we start moving things forward. So that was just some thoughts really around how we can move to an approach that's going to help your child and to resolve any struggles you might be having. So let me know if you've got any questions. Obviously, you can put them below the video. You can jump into our free Facebook group, Connective Parenting Using NVR, or jump onto our website, connectivefamily.com, where we've got lots of resources that can help you think about how we're moving forward. That's all for today. Thank you.